that comes out, that big horn from out of the four winds, destroy the four horns that were going towards them. Mighty horn. And the Bible talks about this little horn, that the little horn becomes great. The eagle, the ram, was great in Daniel chapter 8. The eagle was very great. But the little horn that is seen in Daniel chapter 8 was called exceedingly great. Now notice that. The ram was great with the two horns. The goat with the one notable horn like a unicorn was called very great. But the little horn, brother Leo, was called what? It exceed greatness. This one is exceedingly great. That's what it means. It exceed great. And so mighty was this little horn that the Bible tells you what the little horn did. It didn't even just wax towards the east and towards the west. But the Bible said it waxed towards the glorious land, Israel. But it did more than that. The Bible said it not only go to Israel and conquered God's people, because by the time Jesus was here, Israel was a vassal of Rome. Roman armies and Roman governor and Roman kings were in Israel. Israel was run by Rome. So they said it walks towards the glorious land, but it did more than that. The little land become mighty, that's why it's exceedingly great. It mashed up everybody, including God's people on earth, but it did something else. The Bible said the little horn reached up towards heaven and going up for God. Each little horn going for God. Having conquered all men on earth, it's now reach up towards heaven, going to conquer God. And the Bible said when it reached up to heaven, it grabbed the hosts of heaven, the armies of God, and cast them down to the ground. That's how mighty it is. Cast the hosts of heaven down to the ground. And the Bible said it practiced and it prospered.
Yes, sir.
It practiced all that. And it what? I'm not going into Daniel chapter 8, but it's good to look at. But it's good to look at. I'm just looking at one segment. It gets sweet when I get sweet. I want to get into it. But that's what we're doing today. We don't have enough time now. We're just addressing our question. It practiced and it prospered. Then the Bible begins to tell you what it begins to do with the hosts of God, the things of God. It begins to destroy the things of God. Cutting them down. Dismantling everything that God set up. And the Bible said it got so mighty that it went to the sanctuary of God. And by him the daily was cast away. Can you imagine that? It's taking away the daily God's ministration where God is saving sinner. It mash up that. Mashing up the salvation plan. That's what it does. Cast away that. The daily ministration is where the sinners would come and confess their sins over the Lamb, and the sins would be there. It mash up that. Get rid of that. Can you imagine that? Yes, it's a soul destroying entity, the little Lord. It's destroying people's salvation. It's taking away your salvation from you. And the Bible, because the little horn is mashing, in fact, the Bible describes the little horn as destroying the sanctuary service, salvation itself. So much so that Daniel, having the vision, was shocked. Daniel couldn't believe that any entity could be so bad against God. Daniel was shocked. And then Daniel heard two people talking. Daniel called them holy ones in Daniel chapter 8. Daniel said, I saw one holy one attack to another same. And one holy one said to the other holy one, how long will be the vision concerning, yes, and the abomination of desolation. That's the, go with the word that we're looking for. To cast both the sanctuary and the host underfoot and to trample them. How long will it happen that this abomination of desolation will cast them down? And that's when the word answer came back from the other one. The other holy one said, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be set right. Then we will clean up the sanctuary. We're going to clean up all the things where they were going to do. They mashed it up, but God going to clean it up. And the 2,300 days, then God clean up the situation. No worry, God will give him 2,300 days. Then God will clean it up. God will clean it up. Yeah, it's so long. No worry, man. The Lord just watch him. The God just watch him. And then God is going to clean him up. So that the abomination of desolation in Daniel has to do with the plan of redemption and the completion of the plan of redemption, the utter cleansing of the sanctuary, or the setting right of what has gone wrong. As some translation put it, then shall the sanctuary be set right. So that that which has gone wrong, that is gone wrong, God is going to right it. It has to do with the completion of salvation. And if you notice in Revelation chapter 11, the Bible speaks that when the seventh angel sounded,
The mystery of God.
then the mystery of God should be finished. It's referring to the same time period when everything will be set right. It's finished. But the abomination that makes desolate. You notice how it's called the abomination of desolation now. Desolation is when you wipe something till it's totally clean. It's desolate. It's empty. It's arid. The desert is arid. Nothing is growing there. Everything wiped out. That's why it's called abomination of desolation. It wipes out all righteousness and the holy things. Yes.
So that question then is, are we now experiencing an abomination?
Okay, I was coming to that, but I'm glad that you re-emphasized, because I know you asked that, but I was just showing what happened in the past and how everything was desolate.
The pastor just before you go at the word desolate. That means when Christ leaves the temple and he says your house is left unto you desolate.
Yes, the Spirit of God, Sister White said, left the entire sanctuary. She said, from henceforth, these are her exact words. I'm putting Sister White with her word. You can read too much white lady. She said, from henceforth, all the services of the sanctuary were meaningless.
Yes, and a mockery to God.
And she said, a mockery. Meaningless. And the worship that was going on in the sanctuary, from Jesus said those words, were now a mockery to God. It was mocking and teasing God. That's how bad it was. That it was not only meaningless, but God regarded it as a mockery. So when Jesus said those words, and Jesus left, the Spirit of God left the sanctuary, all the angelic presence that used to be in the sanctuary convicting people of sin and things, leave. The host of God left the sanctuary. So when Jesus leave, it wasn't just Jesus leaving as a person, but Jesus took with him all the holy angels and all righteous thing that was in the sanctuary. Everybody move on. Yes.
Love that point. Everybody went with Jesus.
Yes. So when Jesus said it's left empty, he means he's taking back all his stuff and put in the sanctuary. So everything was now meaningless. So it becomes empty. And as Ellen White puts it accurately, a mockery to God after that. And now we come to our day.
So wait a minute.
Yes. Okay.
So how many times did the abomination of cause desolation?
Several times, actually.
Oh.
Several times it occurs. It is the nature of sin to destroy. It says the nature of righteousness to build up. Righteousness tends to build up. Sin tends to tear down. You want me to repeat it? It is the nature of sin. And sin, when it is ripe, it brings forth destruction. Not just to the sinner himself, but to all those around him too.
Right. Okay, so because
Yeah.
I'm asking this because I know Jesus had mentioned it in relation to the destruction of Jerusalem, right?
Yeah. But the prophecy, you must remember, as Sister White accurately observed what Jesus did, because the disciples asked him, when shall be the
Right.
sign of thy coming and the end of the world? They thought the destruction of Jerusalem was the end of the world.
Right.
Jesus did not want to tell them plainly that the destruction of Jerusalem is not the end of the world, but the end of the world will be 2,000 years later. That would discourage them.
Right.
So Jesus did what only a God could do. Jesus carefully wove together with the tapestry of his mind. Incidents that would occur at the destruction of Jerusalem, and the same incidents would occur at a larger scale
Right.
at the end of time. So Jesus said, this is what is going to happen. And these things will happen before Jerusalem is destroyed, and they would happen on a wider scale just before the end of time. So the same things that occurred just before Jerusalem was destroyed, we should look for them to occur again. Just before the end of time. So that the same abomination that make it desolate will again stand in the holy place again. It's going to happen. And remember, the abomination of desolation, as we said, has to do with Rome. And the truth is that though the Roman Empire was disintegrated into frazzle by about completely 490 something, for about 79 or about thereabout. It totally dismantled by 600, the year 600. The Roman Empire was probably just a thing of the past, if you know Roman history. But though that occurred, and the Roman Empire was divided into what we call today the nations of Europe, and they are called today independent nations of Europe. France and Belgium and Italy and Spain and so forth. All these were the Roman Empire, but they are now independent countries. Isn't that right? They are not
Yes.
Even though they are in harmony in the European Union. But Rome is no more. Except Rome is still there in Italy as an independent country by itself, but it's no longer a monarchy. Even though that occurred, and the Lord said that this Rome would still stand again in the last day. Because what we have is that the spirit of Rome and Rome still exists in the last day. Because when Rome was being destroyed, the Roman Empire, Justinian, took the Bishop of Rome, and before that it had occurred with Constantine, and it had occurred also with Milan and some other Roman empires. They took the Bishop of Rome several times and give him more and more power. But Justinian, in 508 AD, took the Bishop of Rome and made him, by royal decree, the head of all holy churches, the defender of the true doctrine, and the corrector of all heretics and all who preach heresy and false doctrine. Thus the Bishop of Rome became mighty, but a greater thing occurred with him that was religiously. Politically, when Rome was moved, the capital of Rome was moved from Rome to Constantinople. The empire left the Bishop of Rome in charge of Rome. He said, we need somebody to in charge of the politics of Rome and everything. And he said, who should we find? And he said, nobody better than the Bishop of Rome. So we go back to the church, man, and say, we want to give you some political power now for you to control the governmental affair. And he gave the Bishop of Rome all the political power that he needed. Understand the army. The church bishop now have an army of soldiers ready to fight. No, it's not angel, a man. Army of men ready to fight politics. And you must remember that after the death of Attalus III Philadelphus, who was the king of Pergamos, when Attalus III Philadelphus was on his deathbed, Attalus III was not just the king of Philadelphia reigning, but he was also the high priest of the Babylonian religion. Because the Babylonian religion teaches that the high priest and the king must be one and the same person. That's one of the tenets of Babylonian religion. But when Cyrus took over Babylon, and Darius, his uncle, took over Babylon, the Babylonian priests led a rebellion against them, and the rebellion failed. And when they retaliated, the Babylonian priests fled from Babylon, took the history record, the sacred palladium, the symbol of the Babylonian religion with him. And he fled from Babylon and went to Pergamos, and there he set up the Babylonian religion again. And met the kings of Pergamos, the chief propagator of Babylonian religion. Because Babylonian religion teaches that the king should be not just the head of the state, but also the head of religion, so that all power should be vested in the king, both religious and the political, in the same person. And the king, no, I'm giving you a little history elder. And the king elder of Babylon was supposed to be the one who will unite heaven and earth in himself. In fact, he was called Pontifex Maximus. Somebody called me this morning and I said, you tell me about that at Fort Road Church, and I'll never forget it. We went and did some research on it, and he said it had changed my view completely about a lot of things, because he said, I've never heard anybody talking about the Pontifex Maximus. But what occurred is that he was called Pontifex Maximus, or the greatest bridge builder. Pontifex Maximus. The word pont means bridge. Factio I make Maximus, from which we get the English word maximum, which means biggest, greatest. What put them together, bridge I make big, means the greatest bridge builder. That's what Pontifex Maximus means. And the bridge that he built is the bridge between heaven and earth. Because heaven and earth is reputed in all of these mystical religion. Heaven and earth is cut off. The bridge that made heaven and earth, join it together, was disintegrated. But the pontiff is able to rebuild the bridge between heaven and earth, so that earthly souls, when they die, can travel back to heaven. So he is the Pontifex Maximus. So Attalus, all the Attalid kings, as they are called, were called Pontifex Maximus. But Attalus III Philadelphus history record, when he was on his deathbed, he had no son, he had no heirs or anything, and he was about to die. And all of these officials came to him and they asked him, who will become the pontiff after you die? Who should we elect? Who should we put in the office? Of course, Caesar and him were very good friends, and he said to them, when I die, put Caesar in the office, my good friend Caesar. And when he died, they went to Rome for Caesar. And they told Caesar what his good friend said. And they said, you need to come with us to Pergamos to get the royal titles and vested. And Caesar loved that. Caesar said, what? I'm going to be the pontiff? Yes. And Caesar went, history record. And they had the ceremony and gave him all the titles, the keys, the vestments, everything that relates to Babylonian religion was placed upon Caesar. And Caesar officially became Pontifex Maximus, the greatest bridge builder. And that was how Caesar moved from being a man to becoming God. From that time, it is said that Caesar built statues of himself in every major town so that people could worship him, because he's now the pontiff who will bring them to heaven. All of the coming of Caesar to any town after that was called the Advent. So we had the first Advent of Caesar, the second Advent of Caesar, because he's now God. And it was interesting. From that time, all of Caesar's letters were now called epistles and gospels. Caesar was now God. And from that time, the worship of Caesar was erected all over the place. And you know, some of the apostles died and whatever because they would not worship Caesar as God. But Caesar was determined that I am the Pontifex Maximus. But after the conversion of Constantine, who was Pontifex Maximus and all of that, Constantine, he was now Caesar, as in Constantine. Constantine and his successors decided that we are not the true gods, the true Pontifex Maximus. It is the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, who is the true representative of God, of Jesus. And so Caesar took the Pope the Roman government, and had the service for him. And in royal ceremony with all the Babylonian priests, they took the Pope, and Caesar transferred from himself. They transferred the titles, the keys, and the vestments of the Babylonian religion from Caesar to the Pope. And the Pope became, the Bishop of Rome became Pontificate Maximus. That's how the Roman Catholic Pope got that title, the Pontificate Maximus. And from that time, even today, you still call him the Roman Pontiff. That's how the Pope became God. Yes, that's how he became God. And that's how he became God. And that's how that occurred. And from that time, you will observe, even unto today, the Pope images are all over the place, and you're going to kiss the Pope big toe, right?
Not I.
Yeah, a few years ago, it is said they had to replace one of the statues of the Pope because they kiss off his big toe. Kiss the big toe, and it's so much of the big toe drop off. And of course, the Roman pontiff, the Roman Pope, also called himself, well, he called himself Pope, which is a title that belongs only to God.
Father.
Jesus had already told the disciples in Matthew 23, verse 9, call no man on earth Father, for one is your Father, and he is in heaven. And so Jesus said, in the religious sense, don't call anybody Father. Never birth you. For one is your Father, and he is in heaven. For the one person you must call Papa, Papis. But the Pope took on to himself the title Holy Father. Not just Father, but Holy
Father.
God. He says he has all these God titles. He called himself the Chief Shepherd, and there's all the titles that belong to God. In fact, it is said in the Roman Catholic Encyclopedia that all the titles, keys, and vestment, and all affiliation that is in the Bible given to Christ to show that he is above man and that he is God is also given to the Pope. Yes. And that's why they call him Lord God the Pope, as you know, and so on and so forth. What you said? That's why one of our recent presidents of the United States, when he was asked, when you look into the eyes of the Pope, what do you see?
I see God.
You hear that? Elder G, love what he said. He said, I see God. So that's how the Pope became the Pontificate Maximus, the greatest bridge builder. But the point that I'm making is that all of these things were given to the Pope. All of these things that were given to Caesar to make him great and whatever, to show that he has it. So the Pope becomes not only the head of the holy churches, but also a head of state. And he became the chief representative of the Roman religion, which is the Babylonian religion. And you will observe that the Roman Catholic, the Pope called this church Roman Catholic. Roman means he's Rome. It's Rome that is here. The same abomination that makes desolate is here. Rome is here. But Rome is different from it was when Caesar was here. He did something to Rome that Caesar could not do. He brought Rome to a level that Caesar, Augustus, Julius Caesar, and none of the Caesars could bring Rome to that point. What he did with Rome, he took Rome and made Rome Catholic.
Universal.
He made Rome universal all over the world. So whereas Rome under the Caesars were only ruling in Western Europe, they could not touch Eastern Europe, nor Africa or the other places. The Pope did to Rome what Caesars could not do. Now he took on the titles Pontifex Maximus, Lord and God and all of that. He is now able to make Rome Catholic. And he brings Rome to the far reaches of the earth. And today, it doesn't matter where you go in this world, Rome is ruling supreme as Catholic. Mighty. And it is this abomination that the Bible speaks about everywhere. And the Bible talks about what he will do. The Bible said he will sit in the temple of God, the man of sin. He will sit in the temple of God. He will exalt himself above everything that is worshipped or that is called God. So anything that you call God, The Pope said, I'm in charge of that. I am the head of all of that. I'm above that. I'm above that. And beyond that. Above and beyond. Of course, you hear the recent Pope talking about how he will rewrite the Bible. He can do that because the Bible is nothing. I'm above that. He said, I can rechange the scripture and he can adjust. The Pope is able, the Catholic encyclopedia said, to change and adjust even divine laws. So even laws where God make, the Pope can say to God, show that I'm not sorry for God. I'm sure you go. He can adjust God and correct God. He's not only correct man, but he can also correct God. He's able to do that. And because of that, you will hear the Pope making some corrections to the Bible recently, and even to the commandments. You hear him saying things recently. Yes, he did say that. He said that the commandment is not of the high quality that it is supposed to be. The folks who keep it are fools and what have you, the people who want to just stick to that. He said, you don't stick to that, what God said. Yes, he's giving you new dimensions to your religion, that you only obey the Pope, only what the Pope sanctioned. But the truth is, this abomination that is called popery, that makes all things that is God desolate, or make it up non-effect, if you don't want me to tell you what it means, will again stand in the holy place. And you ask, is this occurring? And I can tell you, this is occurring even as we speak. Because what we find is that Roman Catholic principles are now being taken into
care and protection of the state.
Not just the care and the protection of the state, which is happening in America now. And as I tell you, when Biden came, Biden made it very clear that he was ruling America under the Roman Catholic social teachings. Trump is there now, and Trump secretary is Roman Catholic. His cabinet is practically Roman Catholic. The judges in the United States are practically Roman Catholics, all of them except two. But you will observe that not only is it being taken into the Roman Catholic principles in the care and protection of the state, but they are also standing in the holy place. That is in the church of God, in the temple that should be God, just as how it surrounded Jerusalem. It is now surrounding even the Seventh-day Adventist church. And it's happening even as I speak. That we are making pronouncements that all of them is Roman Catholic principles. And for many years now, you will observe that anything that the Pope announced, the Adventist Church make the same announcement just shortly after. That all that they're doing, we are surrounded by Catholicism in what we do. And you will observe that the principles of Catholicism is now running, yes.
Yes, and if we can step back a little, we can just look at what happened in the Garden of Eden. Deception, lies. Because in the book of Matthew, Jesus warned, let no man deceive you. And we see this great deception of immortality of the soul and Sunday sacredness. And all this deception that is coming from way back, it is because of man yielding to the enemy and transferring the position to the enemy. And so that is why what is happening now in this transference of power is as a result of the violation of God's law.
And it is clear that the doctrine, immortality of the soul, and other such doctrines, and doctrines of devils are seeping all around us. But the principles of Rome is now entering into the holy place, and it's almost controlling the entire apparatus of Adventism. And you see blatantly during COVID, the declarations that the Pope made concerning COVID, you realize the Adventist Church came and repeat them word for word, literally. The Pope, when COVID started, the Pope was the first one to get up and said, if you don't take the vaccine, you don't love your neighbor. If you love your neighbor as yourself, you should take the vaccine. All of a sudden, I turned on my thing and I heard the Adventist Pope, President, what's his name there? Ted Wilson saying the same thing. If you don't, if you take the vaccine, if you love your neighbor, you will take the vaccine. Then I heard Mark Finley saying the same thing. If you love your neighbor, you will take the vaccine. Then I hear Doug Batchelor saying the same thing. If you love your neighbor, you will take the vaccine. And one by one, you see the Adventist people repeating word for word, literally. Then you hear Roma Khan saying the same thing. If you love your neighbor, you hear the Adventist literally. And I said, what is this? When the Pope said, first of all, I said, who's the Pope think he's going to trick with this? And all of a sudden, I realized, then I hear other people, the people, them just start repeating, like a mantra, over and over. And we are amazed at what is happening in our world today. But little by little, the teachings, the philosophy of Rome, Babylon, popery is seeping into all the churches. In fact, you remember Vatican II Council, the Pope said that every Sunday should be a celebration day. And they have this celebration week that the Catholic have where every Sunday is a different day. All Saints Day, this day, that day, and the Sunday churches take it up. And all of a sudden the Adventist church take it up too. Every Sabbath is youth day, elders day, deacon day, pastors day, mama day, this day, everybody day. I was at a conference meeting years ago and I took it up and I said to the brethren, they give us this calendar of events, and I said, I look at it and I realize every Sabbath is somebody else's day. So I said to them, as a pastor, I'm concerned. They said, what are you concerned? I said, because you tell us to write and do up a church roster. And I said, but how am I going to do up a church roster if you give me this calendar of events and tell me every Sabbath is somebody else's day? I said, what do you want me to do? Because I want to roster people for my thing. President looked up and he said, well, Pastor, what you have to do is make sure you put back all those days on the roster. I said, then if that is true, then all I have to do is give you a roster. I don't even go write nothing. Because he said, everything. Yeah, he said, I must put it on my roster, everything that is on the calendar on my roster. And so I tell him, all I have to do is give you back your calendar. And he was kind of angry, but he said, make sure every Sabbath you put one of these things there. And I said to him, but should we have the all day? I can't tell you spend all day on it. He said, you don't have to spend all day, but make sure you have the emphasis. I said, so you want me to go on the Sabbath and you want me to emphasize youth and women and men and pastor and deacon? He said, yes. So I said to him, then when are we going to do what God said? I make the 7th day the Sabbath of the Lord. I said, when is God going to be emphasized? I said, if we do that, are we not messing with a God who said, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God? I said, you want God to kill out all the youth, all the elders, all the pastors, all of the people ever mess with him there? When God said, we must emphasize, I'm going to emphasize pastor, and pastor stand up and say, emphasize me. I said, do you, and I tried to inject it in the mind of the men, but they were not capable of understanding. But the reality is that all of that is popery. It's the Pope that declared that these things must be emphasized on God's day. Because the Pope, the devil, has an agenda of replacing God with man. And the idea of exalting man above God. And I told you already that the Bible will speak of two mysteries. The mystery of godliness and the mystery of iniquity. The mystery of godliness is God becoming man. The mystery of iniquity is man becoming God. The idea that man can become God and the processes by which man is trying to make himself God is iniquity. And the more the man wants to tell you, say, my God, the more wicked him is. And to show you that my God is, me don't know, me just, you know, so my God. And the more he tries to become God, the more he becomes vicious, and the more he becomes lower and lower and lower and lower. And man, in an attempt to become God, is becoming like the beast that perish. Hence, he will receive the mark of the beast. Okay, my time is up. My daughter telling me I need to put on, brother. Yes, you're saying something. Say it quick because I'm turning over.
Can you
I'm just saying that the Sabbath, which is such a solemn day, which points out God's creativity, God's redemptive power. When we understand the trueness of the Sabbath, we will not accept Sunday as a resurrection day, because we know this Easter, a lot of people will be buying bun and celebrating, but we know that the resurrection day comes about because of Easter. And that is why, when during Easter, every day is holy. Holy Wednesday, Holy Thursday, Friday, but the Sabbath is overlooked. And then back to Holy Sunday.
So every day we will accept the Sabbath. And that is so with the devil incidental. And even during COVID, that was the same thing. Every day was locked down day except the Sabbath. The Sabbath was buying day, the Prime Minister said. Who's Adventist, incidentally? But the Sabbath was buying day for you. It was one of the 2 days we open up your worship.
desecration?
So even Adventists, as I tell you, get caught up in this popery thing. And the abomination of desolation is standing even in the Adventist church. And what is happening in the Adventist church is abominable. And it will lead to desolation of everything that is righteous. And you have to be careful because it will destroy your very life. Anyway, we're finished. Let us go. Brother, no will come now.